and in the process of last study, we did not, we only talked about the dialogues as they unfolded. I do want to make a comment or two about the end of the dialogue section before we go on to Elihu. But in chapter 27, and this will take us through chapter 31. So chapters 27 to 31, we have a monologue by Job in which he rehearses his life and his commitments and the things that he's been experiencing. So in 27, the heading that my translation has for chapter 27 is Job affirms his righteousness. I'd like to say it a little differently. Job affirms his commitment to righteousness, the things that he knows to be righteous are things that he intends to do. But then, and in those days, he experienced great blessing as he was committed to righteousness. And we'll see that shortly here. In chapter 28, you have an odd passage, and scholars are not agreed at all on what to do with it. Is this a speech of Job? It would seem to be. It would seem to be a continuation of chapter 27, and yet the language is different and the issues are different. The heading that I have is, that my translation has, Job tells of the earth's treasures. That's a particularly bland and useless summary of the passage down through verse 11. Job is talking about man's search for valuable things, and that's at least chapter 28 is talking about man's search for valuable things. And mankind has been able to find every kind of valuable thing with the exception of one, and that's in verse 12. Where can wisdom be found? Nobody has been able to find wisdom. The interesting thing in this passage is in verse 28. The only place in the speeches of the book of Job where the name Yahweh or Lord is used for God is here in Job 28:28. That's kind of odd. Every place else he has other appellations that are used. But in chapter 28, the tetragrammaton, the holy name, is used. And scholars ponder this. And one man who's been exceedingly influential in my life, I've mentioned to you his name on several occasions, Bruce Waltke, says he really thinks that this is the author of the book of Job interposing in the middle of all this material, interposing his thought on the fact that Job really hasn't found wisdom and will not find wisdom in chapters 29 to 31. Elihu has not found wisdom. And so, as we shall see, Elihu has his place, and it is an important role in the development of the thought. But he also fails to understand what God's trying to do in the life of Job and in the story of Job. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's the author saying, with all of this discussion that has gone by, nobody has really understood what's going on. So we leave that and move on. I want to go to chapter 29 and just briefly talk about it. We won't say much about it, but in chapter 29, he rehearses all the days of blessing that he enjoyed, honor and respect by everyone. Even the elders rose up before him. But then in chapter 30, since his ruin, he is mocked even by children of men he wouldn't have hired to keep his flocks. So these days have become horrible. And in chapter 31, once again, he asserts his integrity, as my heading of my text has in this translation. Chapter 31 is a continuation of that earlier passage where he is talking about his commitment to righteousness. And in chapter 31, he talks about the sins that he has made it his business to avoid, to try to stay away from. What I'd like you to understand in this passage in chapter 31 is one specific passage in it. Let's see. I don't have it marked. Let's see. It should be in the 30s here. Chapter 31, verse 33. Have I covered my transgressions like Adam by hiding my iniquity in my bosom? Because I feared the great multitude, and the contempt of families terrified me, and kept silent and did not go out of doors. His commitment to righteousness is such that he didn't hide his sin. He made it known as it was appropriate to make it known. He made it known, didn't hide, and dealt with it appropriately. So Job, this is part of what we said 2 sessions ago in Job 1. Job is blameless and upright, not because he has not sinned. Here is the evidence that he did. But he is blameless and upright because he deals with sin properly. Righteous people can talk about their sin because they know 2 things. They know they're forgiven and they know they're cleansed. And so they can talk about their sin from the past. And this is part of what Job does in this passage. But that's the end. Chapter 31 is the end of Job's speeches. With chapter 32, we turn to Elihu, and this will take us through, how far does that go? It'll take us through chapter 37. So we'll just summarize what Elihu has been saying. This has been our pattern to summarize, to teach the book of Job chapter by chapter would take far too long, and 3 weeks, 3 hour-and-a-half sessions are not enough to do that. So we can summarize here. Chapters in these chapters 32 to 37. Elihu serves as the connecting link between the dialogue section and Yahweh's speeches. I must say, from this very beginning point of talking about Elihu, that scholars whose job they believe is to pick apart scripture and like getting a really nice automobile and bringing it home, their job is to take it apart and see all the pieces and then just leave the pieces lying on the floor instead of putting the car back together. And so they will say, well, Elihu has no place in this dialogue. He doesn't address any of the issues. He doesn't give any answers. But this comes from a hermeneutic of skepticism, a principle that you always doubt your sources. You never trust anything that you read, including the scriptures. You always assume that something that is involved in self-interest is engaged in the writing of scripture. And so Elihu is an intrusion. Some stupid person in the ancient world didn't realize that this material didn't fit there, but they put it in anyway. And everybody started saying, oh, look, what a great addition to the book of Job. They don't understand the function of writing in the ancient Near East when they do this. scholars are beginning to understand that, and they're beginning to move away from this fragmentation of Scripture. But it's so deeply rooted, it goes back to the middle of the 18th century that this kind of approach was practiced in the Scriptures. And here we are in the 21st century, coming almost to the middle of the 21st century, and that's a good 300 years, and you don't walk away from 300 years quickly. But in fact and in reality, Elihu does connect the dialogues with the Yahweh speeches. And that's the second point on the screen. He summarizes the dialogue by quoting and showing that neither the friends nor Job have established their point. One of our problems in reading Hebrew is Hebrew has only limited ways of signaling to the reader when a quotation begins. In English, we have quotation marks. And so we can, when we're quoting somebody else in writing, we put quotation marks around the statement so that the reader knows that I'm quoting someone else. And then we also put a footnote there, and we assume that people will actually check the footnotes. Probably most of us ignore the footnotes most of the time, but the footnotes are there so that you can go to the source if you need them. One of the reasons scholars think that this portion is so confused and so difficult to understand is that they don't recognize the fact that he's quoting the friends and Job, elements of their own point of view, in order to interact with them. So he summarizes the dialogue by quoting and showing that neither the friends nor Job have established their point. And then he lays out basic reasons why God sends suffering. And this is the important portion of what Elihu contributes. What's interesting here is that he will anticipate things that God will say in his speeches. So he really is, Elihu is really laying the link between what the three friends and Job have said and between what the Lord will say in his speeches. He will warn them. This is, you're treading on unsound ground in your discussion of God. You must understand that God is not subject to our comprehension. I want to distinguish two terms here in English. I can understand God, but I can't comprehend him. Now, that may not be perfectly clear to you, so let me distinguish what I mean between the two terms. I can understand God. I can know truth about him and understand that truth, but I can't comprehend him. Comprehend comes from a Latin word that means to fully envelop something. I have here a pin, a lapel pin. Perhaps you can see it. It's a Boy Scout pin. Both of my older grandsons have earned Eagle Scout, and they give these pins to members of the family and so on. It's quite a small thing, and when I want to comprehend it, I can put it in my fist and hold it completely within my fist. I can wrap my hand around the pin. There it is. Boy, I dropped it. There it was in the palm of my hand, fully comprehended by my hand. This is what we're talking about when we talk about comprehending God. I cannot wrap my mind around him so that I understand everything there is about him. The more I know about God, the less I know that I know about God. There are two references in the Psalms in the late 90s. One of them is in the late 90s and the other is in the early hundreds. God clothes himself in clouds and thick darkness is one of them. The other one is He clothes himself in light like a garment. Now, which is it? Does he clothe himself with light as a garment, or does he clothe himself, surround himself with clouds and thick darkness? And the answer is both. And you will say, well, how can it be both? And the answer is very simple. Have you ever seen the sun, the actual surface of the sun? And if you're scientifically involved in any way, you will know you have never seen the surface of the sun. You've seen the photosphere of the sun. But when you look at the sun, you cannot see the surface of the sun. It's hidden by light. So the surface of the sun to our eyesight is surrounded by clouds and thick darkness, but it is also clothed in light. Most of you have seen a photograph, an old photograph made with heavily backlit exposure. And what you see in the photograph is just a shadow. All you see is the outline of a person. Now, you recognize the outline of a person. You may even recognize the person because you know the person well enough to know their shape. But you can't see any features of the first person because light has hidden the person in darkness. It's this kind of thing that we're talking about. I can understand God adequately. His revelation is an adequate revelation of who he is, but it is not comprehensive, and I cannot comprehend the whole person. I can perceive who he is, know truth about him, but I must always realize that I can never comprehend all that God is doing. And this is one of the things that Elihu warns that they are not paying attention to. You cannot fully comprehend God. So that middle point on the screen, as we have it, is important. He summarizes the dialogue and shows that they have not established their point. Neither Job has established his point that God is unjust, nor have the friends established the point that Job is a great sinner. But he's then drawing us through from the dialogues into what God will say. The reasons for suffering, if you'll turn to Job 33 and look at verses 29 and 30, and then we'll look at some other things that Elihu says. Job 33, 29 and 30. Behold, God does all these oftentimes with men. And here is one of his points. Verse 30 goes on to say, his goal of doing these things with men is to bring back his soul from the pit, that he may be enlightened with the light of life. So there are two goals that God has in all that he does. And this is not different for Job. Job has been brought through horrible suffering to bring his soul back from the pit and enlighten him with the light of life. So protecting Job and instructing Job. In a very real sense, it is the case that Job doesn't need protection insofar as his history is concerned, but his history can lead to serious problems, one of which occurs in the process of Job's speeches. Job is not suffering because he has sinned, but in his sin, in his suffering, he has begun to sin. He charges God with injustice. This is always wrong. I may not understand the justice of God. And we talked about different kinds of justice last week. I would encourage you to go back and look at that portion of the discussion that we had last week. Different kinds of justice. I may not understand the justice of God. I may not understand why what I'm going through is part of the justice of God. But not all justice is retributive. some justice is remunerative. And this is one of the things we're going to say as we finish this morning or this evening with you. As we finish, Job was not suffering because he sinned. He was suffering because he was righteous. And if you could know that in any particular suffering you are undergoing, if you could be aware that the possibility exists that in this suffering, you are God's test case to silence the slanders of Satan, would it make it worth it? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. But what if you are the only person who can silence the slanders of Satan against God, the only person, as Job was in his day, the only person who could be tested to see whether God is worthy of worship even if he doesn't bless, or worse, as we say, if he blesses for a lifetime and then takes it all away in an instant, which is in some ways worse. Job was the test case. And if you could know that, would that change your response to the suffering? God is so pleased with me that he trusts me to handle this suffering. This is where we're headed at the end of the book. So he is protecting Job and instructing him, but there is another aspect of protecting Job. As we have said, Job is not suffering because he had done evil, but in the suffering, he begins to do evil before he charges God with injustice. So Job deserved the suffering in the sense that he was the prize demonstrating point that God is worthy of worship, even if he doesn't bless. And he silences the slanders of Satan by that. But he doesn't deserve the suffering if I think of it as retributive. God is not getting him for something that he did wrong. On the other hand, suffering produces a good deal of pride in the sufferer. We have an old song here, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. And sufferers sing that song a lot. I've even seen it in movies here in the United States that were made by unbelievers. They're mocking folks pretty much who sing that song. But on the other hand, folks, don't we find that great sufferers become very proud of their suffering and they want to talk about it all the time? And this is where Job is. He's very proud of the fact that he has remained steadfast no matter the amount of suffering he's undergone. So the protection and instruction is protection against growing in pride in his righteousness, first before the suffering began, but it's also protection showing him that he really is not quite as in control of his life as he thought he was. And so there is both protection and instruction in what Job is undergoing. But there are also three pleas that are addressed to Job that Eli gives to Elihu, 36:17 to 19. So let's look at this. But you were full of judgment on the wicked. Judgment and justice now take hold of you. Beware that wrath does not entice you to scoffing. Job is really, really close. We looked at Job 9 and 10 last week. Job is really, really close to scoffing. God is wise. God is powerful, Job said in chapter 9. But he uses his wisdom and his power simply for destructive purposes. There is nothing that God does that builds up. All he does is he erects something to destroy it. And that's getting awfully close to scoffing. Let's read on to verse 19. Will your riches keep you from distress? Or all the forces of your strength? And all the strength that Job rehearsed in his last speeches of the book, all the strength that he rehearsed, all the riches, all the honor that he had, did that keep him from suffering? And the answer is no. So why should you, as we say, why should you doubt in the darkness what you have learned in the light? If you've learned something true in the light, don't abandon it in the darkness. And in the darkness of Job's life, he's abandoning the benevolence of God, his graciousness and his goodness, his kindness and his mercy, in favor simply of a sovereign power and sovereign justice that does what it pleases without reference to the desert of the recipient. So he's come close to scoffing. Then he urges him, 36:20, not to succumb. So verse 20, do not long for the night when people vanish in their place. Don't give in as you did in Job 3. Job, in chapter 3, you were longing for death. You were longing for non-existence. You don't understand the gift of life. And it's hard for sufferers. Folks, I talked to a man just this week here in Memphis who was captured. He was a civilian in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe during America's conflicts over there. And he was captured by the enemy. They twisted off one of his fingers. They tortured him mercilessly. In the midst of great suffering, it's easy to embrace succumbing to the suffering. When I was in the Army in my training days, they told us if you're captured, there was every chance that we might go to Vietnam. If you're captured by the enemy, they will torture you. And you are obligated to hold out against the torture as long as you can do it and not give up any information to the enemy. You must not give, but they're going to torture you long enough, and they know how to torture you so perfectly that you will eventually give information, but you must hold out as long as you can. This is what we're talking about in succumbing. You must not succumb to hopelessness. You must not succumb to despair in suffering. You must hold fast to the Lord and cling to him no matter the cost. And then finally, 36:21, be careful. Do not turn to evil, for you have preferred this to affliction. It's all one, Job has said. If I'm righteous, God punishes me. If I'm a sinner, God punishes me. Why have I committed myself so deeply to righteousness? Why have I taken this stand for righteousness? If God's going to end up treating me like a sinner, I might as well have gone on in sin and just found the justice of God wiping me out, and I would be gone and I would never have to face anything else. So 3 pleas that he applies to Job: don't scoff, don't succumb, and don't sin. These are pretty important within the argument of Elihu, and so I spend some time talking about them. Elihu does end with 3 suggestions. Let's turn to 37:14. Now, in 14 to 20, he says you can't comprehend God. And this is what we were just saying. And this is how he's preparing Job for God's appearance. So verse 14, listen to this, O Job. Stand and consider the wonders of God. Do you know how God establishes them? Brothers and sisters, this is exactly what God's going to talk about in his 2 speeches in the succeeding chapters. Precisely the very point. So So Elihu is preparing Job for what the Lord is saying. Verse 16, do you know about the layers of the thick clouds and the wonders of one perfect in knowledge? You whose garments are hot when the land is still because of the south wind. Do you understand? Can you with him spread out the skies, strong as a molten mirror? Teach us what we shall say to him. We cannot arrange our case because of darkness. Shall it be told him that I should speak? Or should a man say that he would be swallowed up? But this is precisely what Job is saying. He has been saying, God, I want you to come to court. And we'll do one of two things, whatever you want to do. Either you will speak and I will answer, or I will speak and you will answer. And God's going to say to Job, who is this who wants to come to court with God? I'll ask you some questions, see if you can answer them. And Job can't. So the very thing that Job said he wanted in the speeches that he's given earlier in the book, Elihu says, this is folly. You can't comprehend God and you can't question him. His ways are so above ours, we will never understand them. We will never comprehend what he's doing or saying. Verses 21 to 23, you can't just search and find God. And that's what Job has been saying right through his speeches. I try to find him, but he's not there. And when he does pass by, he passes by and he's already gone. And I can't contact him. And this was one of the greatest sufferings Job had, the silence of God in the midst of his suffering. So how do you really think that you're going to question God? Brothers and sisters, you've got to remember, and as we teach this book, we've got to affirm to people, listen, you can ask all the questions you want of God, but he is not obligated under any circumstance to answer your questions. This is the hard part for us. We in America always are talking about accountability and who is accountable to who, and is there any oversight over the actions of this officer in a corporation and that sort of thing. But God has no overseer, no one who can call him to account. He alone is sovereign, and the essence of sovereignty is to have no other wills to which you are accountable. And God is not accountable to any other will. You will remember this once I have you turn there. Turn to Romans chapter 11 and the last verses of chapter 11. I can get every chapter of Romans but chapter 11 here. My fingers won't turn pages these days. Verse 33, Romans 11:33. You can probably quote it. Oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and unfathomable his ways. For who has known the mind of the Lord, or who became his counselor? Or who has first given to him that it might be paid back to him again? God is not accountable to anyone for his actions. And so I have thought in many occasions of my life in the past, things are happening that I don't understand. And when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask God about this. And he will probably allow me to do it. But for most of my questions, 2 or 3 things will be true. Standing in his presence, most of the questions that I've had in my lifetime won't matter anymore, because they just won't matter. They will be insignificant questions. Some of the questions I have had, by simply seeing the glory of God, will have a satisfactory answer. And some of the questions I have had, probably perhaps the majority, will be seen to be simply irrelevant, no longer mattering. But some of the questions he will answer, because he's a gracious God and he wants his people, his beloved children, to understand and to be able to function well in their relationship with him. So some of the questions he will answer. And it will be like, in some measure, a 5-year-old coming to an elderly, very wise grandfather, asking silly questions. And after a point, the grandfather reaches over and pats this beloved grandchild on the head and says to his dear one, you're a good boy, but it's time for you to go play. The questions simply, the answers would not help if I got them. So why even entertain the questions? So these 3 suggestions to Job climax Elihu's speeches as he goes through this passage. Chapter 38 begins the speeches of the Lord. And there are 2 speeches, 38:1 to 40 verse 2, with Job's response in 43-5. And then 40 verse 6 to 41:34 with Job's response in 42:1-6. So we'll look at them in a little bit more detail, not much. The first speech, and in this speech, you would want to compare 13:20 to 22 and 28:2-7. So let's do that. Go back to Job 13, 20 to 22. In 13:20, only 2 things do not do to me, Job says. Then I will not hide from your face. Remove your hand from me, and let not the dread of you terrify me. Then call, and I will answer, or let me speak, then reply to me. This is so childish, and yet I have said the same things. So Job is going to get the opportunity to do precisely this, except that he's not going to be able to answer. Look at verse 22. Then call and I will answer. He's not going to be able to answer. You know the response of Job. Or let me speak and then reply to me. And God doesn't give him the opportunity to respond. Look at chapter 23, verses 2-7. Again, the same kind of material here in 23, 2-7. 23:2. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come to his seat. I would present my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would learn the words which he would answer and perceive what he would say to me. Would he contend with me by the greatness of his power? No, surely he would pay attention to me. There the upright would reason with him, and I would be delivered forever from my judge. Would he contend with me by the greatness of his power? No, he says. Job doesn't understand the Lord. I don't either. But by reading Job, I can come to understand better than Job did in the experience. He learned from this experience. Chapter 38, 1 to 40, verse 2 has been described as 70 questions about the ways of God in the natural world. God now comes to Job. Would he overwhelm me with his power? Well, look at 38, verse 1. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, do you have hurricanes in India? I'm sorry, not hurricanes. Do you have tornadoes in India? You might call them cyclones. Anybody?
Yes, we do have cyclones.
Okay.
not
Does
hurricane.
a cyclone come off the sea?
Yep.
Okay. A hurricane,
They call it depression on the sea.
yeah, a tornado is not usually associated with the sea, at least in the heartland of America. A tornado is landborne, and the causes are not well understood, but it's clashing of a cool air mass and a warm air mass that's laden with moisture, and they are shocking. The thing that Job is confronting here is something like a tornado. I've never seen a tornado with my living eyes. I've seen movies of them, and they are incredibly destructive. In some ways, they are more destructive within their path than a hurricane is or a cyclone. They are just shocking in their power. People who have been through tornadoes have said they sound like a freight train roaring through your house, and they're just horribly powerful. God appears to him in a whirlwind, in a tornado, and this is shockingly powerful. Job thought maybe God wouldn't overwhelm him with his power, but God does. And as he appears, his response, verse 2 in chapter 38, who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now gird up your loins like a man, and I will ask you, and you instruct me. And now he starts asking the questions. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Now, the number on the screen here, 70 questions about the ways of God in the natural world. I haven't gone through to count to see if there are 70 questions. It may be the case. 70 is close enough, though, for what we've got here. It may be the case that there are actually 70. There might be 65 or there might be 72. I don't know how the count was made. I don't know the principles on which the count was made, but the point of that statement on the screen is not to be precise as to number. It's to say that God now not only overwhelms Job by the power of his appearance, but he overwhelms him with questions for which Job has no answers, and God gives none. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Job doesn't have an answer for that, and God doesn't give an answer for it. And so, in a sense, what's going on in this whole passage is this third point that's on the screen. If you can't understand my ways in nature, how will you judge my moral government? There are people, I have a testimony from a friend whose daughter has decided, she's a teenager, the quite wise and ripe age of 16, has decided that God's a bully and she doesn't want to have anything to do with God anymore. Just fed up with God. As if a 16-year-old would have enough wisdom to judge God's moral government. I'm 73. As if a 73-year-old would be wise enough to judge God's moral government. You see the difference, folks. 16-year-old certainly isn't, but a 73-year-old isn't any more prepared for this. So it doesn't matter how many years you've walked with the Lord, how much you've read the scriptures, how much you think you understand scripture. It simply does not matter. None of that matters, because God's ways are not our ways, and we will never comprehend him. And the incomprehensibility of God is a crucial doctrine for you to understand, that you simply are going to stand before, in fact, not only going to, but you are standing before one who is incomprehensible. Do you remember the vision that Ezekiel has in Ezekiel 1? I'm confident that you do. In all of that vision, long description of the appearance of God on the plains of Habur. The one thing that's not described is anything about God's appearance, except for the glory of it. But we got a somewhat minute description of the wheels and of the chariot and of the cherubim, but the appearance of God is not described. He is beyond description. And I want you to notice next time you read Ezekiel 1, how often Ezekiel says, it was like, it had the appearance of, it was similar to. Over and over and over again, Ezekiel simply lacks language to describe the actual appearance. All he can do is compare it to things in his experience. But at the end, would you turn to Ezekiel 40? Where is that? Ezekiel 1. Would you turn to Ezekiel 1 with me? Let me point out one statement at the end of Ezekiel 1, a statement that you will know, but I want you to see it with our conversation in mind. There we go. Chapter 50 of Jeremiah, chapter 51, Lamentations 5, Ezekiel 9. My fingers will not turn pages anymore these days. Ezekiel 1, verse 28. As the appearance of the rainbow, and notice the appearance of the rainbow. I can't describe the rainbow directly. As the appearance of the rainbow and the clouds on a rainy day, so was the appearance of the surrounding radiance. Now watch this. Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell on my face and heard a voice speaking. He can't describe the glory of God. He can't even describe the likeness of the glory of God. All he can do is describe the appearance of the likeness of the glory of God. Ezekiel ransacks human language in order to get enough things to say so that someone might comprehend some way, understand the appearance of the glory of God in that vision. But in the end, he can't describe the glory of God. He can't even describe the likeness of the glory of God. He can only describe the appearance of the likeness of the glory of God. A mirror image of a mirror image, but not the direct thing itself. Brothers and sisters, we simply are not in a position ever to understand the moral government of God, no matter how much understanding we have. We cannot explain the ways of God to man in a way that will satisfy all humanity and even our own questions about what God's work is and how it is just and right and good. I must trust this in God and never simply presume upon it. So his great issue is that Job is asking questions for which no answers will be sufficient. If Job knew from the beginning why the suffering happened, as we discussed it 3 weeks ago, two Thursdays ago, as we discussed it, I tried to make the case that Satan was raising the question of whether God was really worthy of worship. And God offered Job as the proof that he is worthy of worship if he doesn't bless. If Job had known that, two possible responses would come from them. One possible response would be for Job to say, well, of course, if this is a test, I can get through this and it will be okay. The other possible response would be for Job to say, who does God think he is? I'm not just a puppet on a string. I'm a living, feeling human being. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. But either way, the test would have been spoiled. Either way, it was essential that Job be in the darkness about the causes of the suffering for the test to be achieved. brothers and sisters, so important was this test that God enshrined it in Scripture. And something in the neighborhood of 4,000 years later, we're still talking about Job. Job is a man still honored in our day. 4,000 years later, name me somebody else 4,000 years ago who is still being honored today. So this must have been an exceedingly important event, and very important for God to show that his glory is not simply supported by power, that he can buy enough worshipers for people to worship him, but they don't worship him in truth. God's glory is such that people will not give up on God. They won't abandon God when they know him. They won't abandon God even when they can't understand what's happening. So these 70 questions are taking Job through every kind of element of the created world, saying, do you understand these things? If you don't understand these, why do you think you can call my moral judgment, my moral government into question? So we get to chapter 40, verse 2. Let's move over there. In 40, verse 1 and 2, then the Lord said to Job, will the fault finder contend with the Almighty? And fault finder is the right term. That's what Job was doing in the speeches. Let him who reproved God answer it. And Job's answer, verses 3 to 5, is incomplete. Job answered the Lord and said, behold, I am insignificant. What can I reply to you? I lay my hand on my mouth. Once I have spoken, I will not answer. Even twice, I will add nothing more. That's a good answer. It's not enough. You see, sin did not cause Job's suffering. Righteousness did. Sin did not cause Job's suffering, but in his suffering, he had begun to sin. He became proud of his commitment to righteousness. He became proud that he had not sinned with his lips, but he did sin with his lips. So simply saying I'm insignificant is not enough. More needs to be done. More needs to come from Job before the story is sound. And so the second speech starts in 40 verse 6 and goes through 41:34. Would you discredit my justice? He says, verse 8. Verse 8. Will you really annul my judgment? Will you condemn me that you may be justified? And that's what Job was doing in the speeches. He was condemning God as one who doesn't practice justice except by power and by wisdom. And he's so wise, he can destroy anyone at any time in any way he wants. Will you really annul my judgment? Will you condemn me that you may be justified? Or do you have an arm like God? Can you thunder with a voice like his? Adorn yourself with eminence. Clothe yourself with honor and majesty. Pour out the overflowings of your anger and look on everyone who is proud and make him low. Look on everyone who is proud and humble him and tread down the wicked where they stand. You don't think I'm dealing with the wicked enough? You go do it. Let's see how well you do. Hide them in the dust together. Bind them in the hidden place. Then I will confess to you that your right hand can save you. So this fairly harsh response from God is followed by the two great creatures, Behemoth and Leviathan in Hebrew, Leviathan in English. What are we to make of these characters? Folks, I don't know. What is Behemoth? I don't know, folks. This is beyond me. Some say that these are mythical creatures that are taken from literature and from the mythology of the world in which Job lived. And God's saying, would you be afraid of Behemoth? And the answer would be, well, oh, yes, but I wouldn't feel the fear unless I'd actually seen the animal. So it seems to me that these are animals that are actually alive in the times of Job. So behemoth, I don't know what it is. The behemoth is any kind of cattle. And behemoth, it's a plural that may be used as the prototype of all powerful cattle. Maybe that's the point. I don't know what to make of it. But the one thing that you know in this passage is it's a terrifying animal, and Job wouldn't draw near. Even worse is Leviathan. What are we talking about Leviathan here? Some Bibles treat this as the hippopotamus. Let's see. 41:1 here. Can you dry out Leviathan with a fishhook or press down his tongue with a cord? Leviathan is a mythical character in Canaanite myth. But Leviathan is used in a variety of ways in the scriptures. Leviathan is a reference to any power that is endangering endangering Israel. And Job should be afraid to face Leviathan. As I say, some have suggested that this is the behemoth is the hippopotamus and Leviathan is the crocodile. But I have in verses 10 and 11, no one is so fierce that he dares to arouse him. Who then is he that can stand before me? Who has given to me that I should repay him? Whatever is under the whatever is under the whole heaven is mine. I'm getting spam calls a lot these days. I'm sorry I didn't turn off my ringer. Crocodile, maybe, but does a crocodile really breathe forth fire? And do his eyes really flash like lightning? Is this what a crocodile is? I don't think so. I don't know what it is. Once again, some have said maybe if you believe in a young earth creation 10 to 25,000 years ago, Job lived in a time when there were still dinosaurs on the earth. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I don't know what to make of Genesis 1. I believe Genesis 1 and I interpret it as much as I can in a literal fashion. I believe that what God does in Genesis 1 is 7 days, 7 24-hour days. But I don't know that it's the original creation of all matter. And I don't know when that I would call it a reorganization of an already existing orb, the earth that's covered by water. So I don't know when it happened or how long ago it was or anything else. All I can do is explain this passage and then simply go away and say, I can only go as far as scripture takes me and not say anything more. If Leviathan didn't exist, if it's merely a mythical creature, then it's not nearly as frightening as a real animal would be. And so if Job can't rule Behemoth and Leviathan, why does he think he could discredit the justice of God? It is simply beyond understanding that Job, you see, in the midst of suffering, you often abandon logic. Your logic is so influenced by self-interest that you can't really think logically. And you should not, in dealing with great sufferers, expect them to think logically. The most that you should do for them is to weep with them and pray with them and for them. But don't try to instruct them. In the midst of great suffering, it's not time for clear thinking. They're not able to think clearly. You weep with them, and you pray with them and for them, but you don't try to instruct them. It's not time. Time will come. The day will come when instruction is useful, but it is not during the suffering. What God is doing is he's calling Job back to reality. Do you really think that you have enough insight when you can't even understand these basic things? Do you really think you have enough insight to be able to call into question my moral government of the world? And the answer obviously is no. He says, and Job's response in 42:2, then, I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. Who is this, you say, that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore, I have declared what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. I said, hear now, and I will speak. I will ask you, and you instruct me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore, my text reads retract. The Hebrew word can be translated repent. Therefore I retract and I repent in dust and ashes. So 5 points that we need to make here in this last portion of Job's speeches. You're omnipotent and sovereign. I didn't know what I was talking about. I'll let you instruct me, verse 4. Verse 5, now I see you face to face, therefore I despise myself, and I repent in dust and ashes. The outcome now is it was not enough for Job to see himself simply as insignificant. It was necessary for him to perceive that he needed repentance. The resolution of the story, chapter 42, verses 7 to 17, that section is sometimes held to be a real departure from the point of the book, but it must come because the men of his community must see that God rewards him, and doesn't reward him in a simple fashion. He rewards him in a magnanimous fashion. He rewards him by doubling everything that he had lost, except his wife. So the resolution is essential. And I have a long quotation here that I need to read with you so that we'll understand this message. We'll see who it's from in a minute. Humankind's self-serving judgment of what is good is an inadequate basis for judging divine morality. When I judge what is good, it's generally what I enjoy, what I feel comfortable with, but that's not all that is good in the world. So that's an inadequate judgment of divine morality. Creation itself clearly teaches that from the human perspective, the created order includes the rational and the irrational, the meaningful and the nonsensical, the teleological and the absurd. Teleological means things that obviously have a purpose. Absurd refers to anything that seems just completely random and unexplainable. Satan used the irrational elements, lightning and storm, to destroy Job. Moreover, the threatening sea, the netherworld, and the troublesome weather, all of which cause human anxiety, are under God's government. The irrational, evil, is given a place and has a measure of freedom in God's moral government, and as a result, human suffering has an ambivalent place within it. Humankind must come to terms with this reality and not interpret it as God's disinterest in law. In truth, energetic chaos is a kingdom within God's dominion. Those aspects of creation that do not fit conventional wisdom, that is, that all must be comprehensible to humankind and serve its purpose, nevertheless constitute a kingdom that is governed by God. These free animals appeal to God not to humankind, Job 38:41. They execute his commands, not humankind's, and exemplified divine wisdom, or the lack of it, from a human perspective. God presents a new perspective on his ordered universe. Job's friends pointed to the creation to illustrate conventional wisdom, that everything in creation is obviously good in that it establishes retributive justice. Job pointed to creation to deconstruct the conventional wisdom and set up the rival wisdom that the omnipotent God smiles on evil and chaos. Dr. Waltke prefers to use the phrase "I am" for God as the Lord. I am points to the creation to deconstruct both antitheses and to establish in their stead the truth that he orders within his government those aspects of creation that favor human beings and those that do not favor them. He transcends both. The unrestricted God, not restricted humankind, rules over both what people call good and bad. Within his government, both have a place. All is good in that they serve his plan, though the human creature cannot know it or understand it. According to this perspective, God is freely creative and redemptive, beyond human understanding. His government transcends a simple calculus that rewards good and punishes evil. If God's actions do not conform to earthlings' understandings, that does not mean that he is dark and or disinterested. He rules by containing darkness and wildness within a government that transcends human wisdom, not by eliminating it. And you have access to this PowerPoint. I believe I have sent this to Brother Timothy in the past. So key lessons from Job. Number one, you don't need to know the reason for suffering. The reason frequently would not help. Second, you don't need to know the reason for suffering if you know the person of God. Third, never doubt in the darkness what you learned in the light. Fourth, you must be content to let God do and know and be some things you can't understand, know, and be. God is God and you are not. And you never know when you are God's showcase to silence Satan. So this is the book of Job as I understand it. These last 5 lessons are largely derived from Roy Zook, as much of the concepts that I've been delivering to you are derived from Roy Zook, who also got that material from William Henry Green that I mentioned to you last week. So thank you for letting me work with you on this material. I'll open it up now to questions and see what you might have to think about in these last minutes.
Wow. Once again, thank you, Dr. Allman, for that profound insights from the book of Job. Yeah, dear friends, please go ahead and ask if you have any questions. And most of you might know that this is the last class of this series. So yeah, if we don't have questions, maybe we'll take a couple of comments from the people. If you are inspired to share how these classes are useful for you, please go ahead and share. But maybe the first preference is for the people who might have some questions, and then maybe we'll have a couple of comments. Brother John, I think you're on mute. Yeah.
In Job 38:2, does God is referring to Elihu when he's saying, who is this?
Oh, I don't think so. I think he's talking to Job.
Okay.
Yeah, because Job is darkening wisdom with as he makes his objections to what God's doing.
Because it is immediately in context. Sometimes in Telugu, we understood that some God is rebuking Elihu in that context.
Yes. That's Job 42. Is that what you said?
38:2.
Oh, 38:2. There's something that intervenes between the end of 37 and 38 too, though. I closed my Bible and I'm having to turn pages. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. So the one he's talking to is Job, not anybody else.
The second verse.
Yeah. Well, look, see, I have, Brother John, you got to understand, I have a doctorate from Dallas Seminary, and I learned great and wise things most people don't know. And one of the things I know is that verse 2 comes after verse 1. That's the immediate context. Verse 1 is the immediate context, not chapter 38 or 37. So, yeah. In any pronoun in Scripture, pretty much, you look for the nearest possible antecedent and not to all the possible antecedents. I'm now in a playroom, it looks like. I don't know how I got.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Allman. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Any other questions?
Sir, this is Shyam.
Yes.
Sir, how can we understand Job as a Christian in his first day life and middle life and end life? How can we understand that?
Okay, I'm not sure I heard the question adequately. Could someone repeat it for me?
How can we understand Job's faith and relationship with God? Even chapter 1 and 2, his spiritual level is very outstanding.
Seems to be, yes.
Somehow he fall down and again he is restored, he repented. So how can we understand all this?
I'm not sure how to answer the question. Let me make a stab at it and see if I'm answering the question you're asking. Every Christian has some level of maturity and some level of immaturity. I referred to a 16-year-old a few minutes ago, and 16-year-olds are pretty much convinced that they're already adults and should be treated completely as adults, with no responsibility. They must be free to come and go and do whatever they please with no responsibilities in the home. They are maturing and they're feeling like adults. And in world history, most 16-year-olds have been adults. It's only since the 1930s that we began to treat teenagers as a different category and treat them still against their nature, treat them still as children instead of what adolescent actually means, adults in development. That's where all of us are, every one of us. I have aspects of maturity. I wouldn't even propose what they are. I have no idea, but I know that I'm not where I was 30 years ago in my faith. And thank God I'm not. But I also have elements of immaturity, and I feel far more aware of aspects of immaturity than I do about aspects of maturity in my life. And so I wonder how God even views me. So every Christian's relationship with God is studied by both maturity, aspects of maturity in their lives, and aspects of immaturity. And part of what God does in suffering is he's exposing the elements of immaturity in us so that we can grow. And Job does grow from being a person who felt confident in his righteousness. He has been rendered how shall I say this? God has placed him in a position where his righteousness is no longer the basis of his argument with God. His repentance is. And so a man who was remarkable and divinely commended for his righteousness recognizes that his righteousness has serious holes and serious flaws and needs repentance. So am I answering the question you were asking?
Yes.
All right, good.
So one more thing. So how God take Job this situation? I mean, from beginning to end, how God deal with him
How did he deliver him?
and deal with him.
Deal with
He's
him.
taking deal.
Well, it's the only way I can answer that is from the actual book itself. And there is a substantial period, don't know how long, 2 to 3 weeks at minimum, of profound suffering where God is completely absent. The dialogues can be read easily within an hour or so. And if we have a complete, I don't know that we do, but if we have a complete account of the dialogue, then an hour or so is all the time that took. So it might be 2 to 3, 4 weeks that he's in this trouble. Or it could be a month or longer, even longer than a month. I don't know, but in that time, God is absent. And to a person, many of you will have had the experience, and some of you will have had people come to you with this experience. In my early days as a Christian, God was so near and so responsive, and just seemed like God was just meeting me at every point. Now I don't sense his presence. Is something wrong? And the answer is no. God's absence is a necessary part of your maturity. You can't grow up without being, as it were, in your mind on your own. For me, at this point of my life, I act as if my way of thinking is that God is present, he's involved, and I don't feel any differently. I just act, I'm just trusting what God has promised. So the issue must be, when suffering comes, am I going to go that way too? And the answer must be, if I don't, then there's more immaturity in me than I realize. Good. Anything else? We only have a few minutes. And perhaps Brother Timothy has some words he needs to share with the group before we end. So I'll turn it over to you, Brother Timothy, and I'll mute myself here.
Brother Timothy, you're in. Yeah.
Dear friends, please go ahead and share your comments. Maybe only few of us get to speak, as it's already time. Yeah, please go ahead, and then maybe we'll have conclusion.
Thank you, Brother Jim Allman. And though we have been reading the wisdom literature in for a long time, but the whole bird's eye view of the books and the perspective, especially Proverbs, how we can interpret them and how they are applicable to present situation, that has been a great takeaway for me personally, though I missed some 1 or 2 classes during Ecclesiastes, but still, and really Job was very encouraging, and the thought that God is more worthy than whatever we suffer or whatever human may think or human may do. It's the God is above all these things and is worthy of worship. Thank you very much, and really blessed, brother. Thank you very much.
Praise God. Yeah, thank you, brother, for sharing. And yeah, absolutely. I think very rarely do we have
Yeah.
seminars conducted on wisdom literature. So
Mm.
I think it's a blessed time that we had. Thank you once again, Dr. Allman, for doing this. Thank you for putting extra hard work to do this. Uh, yeah, we are really blessed. And please do get back to the videos. Videos are available on the YouTube channels, and we'll share that YouTube links once again in the WhatsApp group. So please go ahead and now that we'll have the complete series, we'll be able to share that with beloved ones. And please do share it to your friends, especially Bible teachers. I think they'll be benefited a lot, especially there is a lot of uh, unhealthy information out there. So please take a time to please in spreading some good information or good lectures like this with your friends. So with that, I just
Brother, can I just say thank you to, I don't want to miss the
yes,
opportunity.
please do, sister.
So thank you so much. I'm truly, let me just turn on my video. I'm truly blessed with what you've been sharing.
Thank you.
And God has really spoken to me in a very clearer way. I enjoy the book of Job so much. It's one of my favorite books. But like brother said, Dr. John Babu, the bird's eye view was very different. The perspective definitely changed with various things. But today, frankly, I wanted to share one point that God really struck gold with me. When you were talking about Job's life, I was also being able to connect it with Jesus' life, the situation that he was going through. My
Yes.
God, my God, why did you forsake me? That is exactly how I felt Job was also going through. And when you said we should be able to tell, or we should be able to live lives where God can use us or trust us to silence Satan, that really struck gold in my heart. And I truly am very blessed with that point, and that's been my prayer ever since. So thank you very much for sharing, sir. I'm going to pray for you for a long time, I think, whenever I remember. But truly, may you be a blessing to many more. That's one of the prayers I have. Praise
Wow.
God.
Thank you for coming forward to share, sister. That's truly a blessing. Please do pray for Dr. Allman and his ministry. And we have done other series with Dr. Allman. We have done ecclesiology. We have done Pentateuch with Dr. Allman. So if some of you are new to these lectures, and if you would like to access those lectures also, please let us know. Yeah, we can help you to get to the lectures. And if you are already following the YouTube channel, then those lectures are also presented. So yeah, thank you very much. I think Dr. Allman, very few of us can actually articulate in a way that everybody can understand. And I think hindrance of the language is one of the reasons why people hesitate to speak. If they want to speak to me, probably they might be bold and more courageous to express their views. But since it is two native English speakers on the room, so probably some of us are a little concerned about it. But anyway, I think truly these sessions are helpful, and we are blessed. And even me, I am being shaped by these interactions. So I praise God for you and for the ministry that you've been doing, Dr. Allman. And yeah, we will continue to pray for you. Please do. Uh, Please continue to give us time even in future as your time permits. We'll try to get back to you and see if we can do something else later in this year.
I would love that. Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, Sister Sharon also shares. Thank you so much, Dr. James. Truly blessed with the studies. I praise God for your work. So that's another comment that we have got. So thank you, sister. That's also encouraging to the teachers for sure, when they know that their work is useful and people are actually understanding what they are saying. Yeah. So thank you. And dear all, please continue to pray for Dr. Allman as he continues his teaching ministry. And now that he is retired and focuses on ministry, and then there are a few health challenges also that creep up once in a while. So do pray for him. And Lord willing, we will get back once again with another series sooner or later. Yeah. And we'll post you as we move forward. Thank you. And maybe I think it is fitting to pray and give thanks to the Lord before we end. Brother Jonathan, can we hear some English? Yeah, please give thanks.
Two nations divided by one language, they say. Let us pray. Our Father, we come before you and praise you, first of all, for your word. Father, we never cease to be amazed by what we read, by what we hear. We thank you for the gift of the Holy Spirit, so that we really understand with the heart and not simply the mind. And Father, we pray that you will continue to make these studies a blessing to all of us who have been involved in them, who have had the privilege of listening to them. Father, we thank you for Dr. Allman. We thank you for his willingness to serve in this way, and we pray that you will richly bless him. And Father, despite so many years of studying your word, we ask that you would continue to instruct him, as us all, in the things of God. Yet, Father, as we have learned, as we have been told, there are so many things we cannot understand and are not given to understand. And we pray that you will help us to have the faith to trust you in all circumstances, even those times when, like Job, we may be close to despair and maybe wonder what you are doing. And so, Father, we pray for your blessing upon each person on this call, and pray your blessing upon our service for you. And we ask it all in the lovely name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Yeah.
Very well.
Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, brother.
And I have just posted links to the YouTube. Please do subscribe. Please do look at them for the past lectures. And once again, Dr. James Allman, thank you so much for your time. And please do know that we love you, and we do continue.
Yes, brother. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, brother. Thank you.
Sir, you have truly
Thank you, Brother
imparted
Timothy.
you have truly imparted wisdom, and I think well done, my good and faithful servant is on the way for you.
Thank you.
Excellent. So yeah, if any of you want to be on our WhatsApp group where we share some of these details, please do share your numbers so that we can add you to the group, and yeah, we can stay in touch, and we can all can pray for Dr. Allman. Yeah, thank you, and God bless you all, and have a great night, and have a great day, Dr. Allman, and have a good afternoon, Brother John, or good evening.